Chapter 2. Holder's Story.
"And did you find this man in the long coat and hat?" I asked.
"No,"
answered Holder.
"I looked in the front and back garden, but nobody was there."
He stopped talking and thought for a minute.
"But before I continue with my story, I must tell you about my family and all the different people in the house."
"Ah, yes,"
said Holmes, and he moved his chair nearer.
"My family isn't very big,"
said Holder.
"My wife died 10 years ago, and I've got only one son, Arthur. I'm sorry to say it, but he isn't a very good son. When my wife died, Arthur was the most important thing for me. I wanted to make him happy, so when he asked for something, I gave it to him. I was wrong to do it. I know that now. I wanted Arthur to work with me at the bank, but he was no good with money. He was a wild young man. When he was 18, he started going to a gambling club. He made friends there, all rich young men with a lot of time and money. With these new friends, he learned to play cards, but of course, he often lost. He came to me nearly every week and asked, 'Can I borrow some more money from you, Father?'
"And did you give it to him?" I asked interestedly.
"Yes,"
said Holder.
"Arthur often told me, 'Father, I'm going to leave the club.' And from time to time, he stopped going there. But he always went back after a week or two. There was one friend at the club with a lot of power over Arthur. An older man, Burnwell."
"Burnwell?"
asked Holmes.
"Yes, Sir George Burnwell. Do you know him?"
"I know his name, I think,"
said Holmes. He looked quickly over at me.
"When Burnwell first came to our house, I liked him,"
continued Holder.
"He's a tall, handsome man. When he walks into a room, everybody looks at him. He's a wonderful talker. He can tell the most interesting stories for hours and hours. But he has a cold look in his eyes,"
said Holder slowly.
"For me, there's something strange about him. And my Mary thinks this too. I can see it in her eyes."
"Who's Mary?" I asked.
"Mary is my niece,"
said Holder.
"When my brother died 5 years ago, she came to live with us. She's a wonderful girl,"
continued Holder.
"and she does everything for me at home. I call her my right hand, you know."
Holder looked out of the window and smiled. But the smile suddenly left his face.
"Only one thing makes me unhappy,"
said Holder.
"Arthur loves Mary very much. Last year, he asked Mary to marry him, but she said no. I feel very sorry about this, because Arthur needs a good wife, and Mary is the most wonderful girl."
Holder stopped talking, and then, after a minute or two, began again.
"Now, where was I?"
he asked.
"Ah, yes. Of course, there are the maids in the house, too. There are 3 of them, good young girls, and all of them started with me a number of years ago. And then there's Lucy, our most important maid. She came to us 2 months ago. We're very happy with her, but the only thing is...
What's that? I asked.
She's very beautiful, and she has many admirers. Sometimes they come to the kitchen door in the evening.
Holder then stopped.
Well, that's everybody at home, I think.
And what about yesterday evening?
Asked Holmes.
Oh, yes, my story,
said Holder.
When I came back into the house, it was time for dinner. And after dinner, Lucy brought in some coffee for Arthur, Mary, and me. Over coffee, I told Arthur and Mary all about the Emerald Crown. Lucy was out of the room at this time, I think, but I'm not sure. Arthur and Mary were very surprised when I said, "The famous crown is upstairs in my desk." Of course, they wanted to see it, but I said no. Arthur was very worried about house thieves, but I told him everything's all right because there's a good lock on the desk. But he laughed and said, "Any key opens that desk. I opened it with the key to the attic when I was a child." I didn't listen much to Arthur,
said Holder.
He often talks wildly about things, and by this time I was tired, so I went upstairs to bed. After about 10 minutes, Arthur came to my room. He asked, "Can I borrow some money, Father? I need £200 this time to give back to my friends at the gambling club." I felt very angry. He wanted money for the second time in a week. When I said no, he started to cry. He then walked slowly to the door and closed it angrily behind him.